Welcome to today's Brunch Bunch. Get your vote out. Brunch Bunch is a monthly gathering of people living with disabilities, their family members, advocates, and professionals to explore a variety of issues and to share resources. Brunch Bunch is a partnership with the Prince George's County, Prince George's Community Resources, and the Archdiocese of Washington Department of Special Needs Ministries. Since March, we have been meeting virtually to continue our gatherings. We have explored resources for virtual activities to supporting loved ones living with mental illness. We do hope to gather again in person soon. Please stay connected with us to receive updates and information on future Brunch Bunch events. My name is Rachel Chung, Disabilities Coordinator for the Archdiocese of Washington, member of the Brunch Bunch Planning Team. Our other planning team members include Melanie Clark with the Prince George's County and Pam Rosansky with Prince George's Community Resources. Later in the presentation, we will welcome leaders to our community who will share the importance of using our voices through voting and reaching out to our elected officials. As we begin our webinar, we kindly request everyone to stay muted. There is a question box on your control panel. Use this box for any comments or questions for our panelists. We also welcome any resources you may want to share with everyone today. We will allow time at the end of the presentation for your questions. Resources are available as handouts with this webinar, including a PDF version of this PowerPoint. If you are not able to access the handouts, please reach out to one of the Brunch Bunch team members. We will be glad to assist you. Also, please note this webinar is being recorded and will be available to you as a YouTube video on the Archdiocese of Washington's Department of Special Needs Ministries tab. We have hosted a similar brunch bunch 2 years ago on voting rights for persons living with disabilities. Well-informed professionals, family members, and self-advocates asked this very question: can a person living with a disability, especially an intellectual or developmental disability, vote? The answer is yes. Is this person 18 years or older and meets other criteria? Then yes, a person is entitled to vote. Over 10 years ago, when I was a resource coordinator in Montgomery County, we organized a voter registration drive for people we supported. Turnout to this particular event was low, and I was actually very disappointed. Towards the end of the event, 2 people came in who I knew well. As we assisted these 2 people to register to vote, and they held up their voter registration card so proudly, I was truly moved. I looked up at a colleague and we both became very emotional. This was truly a highlight for me in my career as a professional advocate. Isn't one of the greatest things we can do as advocates is to empower people to speak for themselves, to ensure their civil rights are fully realized? Many people often wonder, does my vote really matter? Does my vote make an impact? The answer again is yes. Every time I have attended the Maryland Developmental Disabilities Day in Annapolis and accompanied self-advocates, we always start introductions as, I am a voting constituent in your district. This already gives power to our voices. There are many ways we can stay active citizens, including at a county level, which is pictured here up in the right-hand corner. Showing up matters. Speaking up matters. I have heard from delegates and state senators that we have brought issues up they have not heard of before, and or no one has contacted them about this issue. Indeed, these relationships with our legislators need to be cultivated throughout the year, not just on advocacy days. And if no one else brings up issues that concern our community, who will do that? Now I will introduce our guest speaker, Tracy Wright, who is very active promoting the rights of people living with disabilities across Maryland. She is the voting advocate on staff with Disability Rights Maryland. Tracy and I have worked for many years together on a variety of issues, but this particular one really empowers people to have a voice in the laws, regulations, and funding impacting their lives. Welcome, Tracy.
Thank you, Rachel. Hi, everyone. As Rachel said, I am Tracy Wright, and I work for Disability Rights Maryland, DRM, you may hear, and it is the protection and advocacy organization for Maryland. And I work as a voter advocate. And this year, voting is a little bit different. Usually around this time of year, just this close to a presidential election, I will be traveling around the state to reach out to as many people with disabilities as I can and meet them in person, help them get registered and answer the questions about voting rights. But because of the pandemic, things have changed a little bit. As most of you probably know, if you did vote in the primary election, all that voting was done by mail and presented some challenges for people with disabilities. But today I'm going to talk to you about the general election and answer hopefully some questions about voting and how the primary election, the general election is going to go at least until this point, because it seems to change on a weekly basis around the Board of Elections and their decision making. But I will try my best to answer any questions you may have. And as Rachel said, we'll have question and answer period, and you can ask the questions. If you cannot type in the box, the chat box, you can raise your hand, and I'm sure we'll get to your question. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy, so much. And I know you probably were planning to touch on this, but many people ask the issue about guardianship and voting. Can you speak to that as well for people that have a legal guardian?
Sure. Guardianship, there are many types of guardianship. The people can have a medical guardian to assist with medical issues or any concerns. They can have someone that helps them, a guardian for financial issues. But unless a judge has specifically taken away a person's right to vote, and it would specifically say that. But just having a guardian for different types of issues doesn't take away a person's right to vote. And if there's any question on that, that's where the DRM can come in. And fortunately, but unfortunately, I guess for this presentation, I'm not a lawyer, but if there are any specific questions, I work with a wonderful legal team that could help us figure it out if you still aren't clear after my answer. And the other thing I want people to know is that anyone who over the age of 18 can register to vote. And as long as I've registered even 16-year-olds, as long as by the general election, they are 18 years of age. And many people get concerned about registering to vote a lot of times because they worry about, well, doesn't that make it so I will be chosen for jury duty? And the answer is you could be, but you can always get support to write a letter explaining that you have a disability, and for those reasons, it would be difficult or sometimes impossible for you to serve on juries. However, jury duty does provide support if requested. So that's a whole nother topic for another webinar. But so the possibility is, yes, you could be selected for jury duty, but I have also supported people to write letters and explain why they cannot serve on a jury, or they feel that they wouldn't be able to serve on a jury. So yes, everyone over the age of 18 can register to vote.
Thank you, Tracy, so much. And oftentimes there's questions about what types of assistance can a person request or use when voting?
That's a great question. And for those who will opt to go to the polls, assuming that everything is going to be the same as the primary election, there will be a few polling places open, and they are listed on the Maryland Board of Election website, or on your local, if you go to your county local Board of Elections, you can also find them, or you can call your local Board of Elections, or you could call me and I could support you to find that. But if you do choose to go in person, there is supposed to be what is called a ballot marking device at that polling place, at every polling place that's open in Maryland. And you could go there and use that device. It is a device that's much like a computer, that is able to read the ballot to people if needed. It's also able to have large print if that's what a person needs. And you're also able to mark the ballot. And for those people that may use a sip and puff system, even that the ballot marking device, or BMD, is able to be compatible with that kind of device, so a person can mark the ballot independently. However, if you don't feel comfortable doing that on your own, you can take someone in to assist you. The only people you cannot take in, it would be your boss. And the reasons for that is because they're afraid that your boss may influence your vote or tell you who to vote for. So they wouldn't want that. Or if you belong to a union, you cannot take your union representative in with you, or you may not take someone that works for one of the major campaign, the major parties, which are Democrat and Republican. And so you couldn't take those folks in to assist you, but you could take anyone else you feel comfortable with to assist you and to vote. And they can provide any assistance you may need, or you could also request assistance from the election judges there at the polling place. Typically, they will send 2 election judges over to you, not because they think you need all that much support, just to make sure that any assistance you're being given is being done fairly, and that neither one of the judges are trying to influence or change the way you want to vote. Now, as far as the ballot goes, the judges, if you do choose to have judges support to vote, they can only read you what's on the ballot, which means they cannot explain anything. So it's good for you before you go to have an idea for who you want to vote for. And they do send a sample ballot out. And I do recommend that people take a look at that. And even previously, I have recommended that people go ahead and fill that out at home. So then they just have to, because they can bring it in with them and just transfer their answers onto the ballot that you receive there. If you're comfortable doing that. So there's many ways you can get support to vote. If you're going to vote by mail, which a lot of people chose to do that can present some challenges for people with disabilities, because voting by mail, if you need assistance marking the ballot, you can't use a ballot marking device at home. So you would need to get someone to help you fill it out. And for me, particularly, I can write fairly decently, but I did have trouble filling in the circles on the ballot. So I chose, after my first try, my first question, to have my staff assist me at home to do it, because you do need to fill in those circles completely, or the answers you give won't count. And the good news in Maryland is every single ballot is counted. So when you listen to the news on the night of the election and they're giving their projections of who won, they give those projections, but I found out a few years ago when I was with Rachel, as a matter of fact, doing a similar type of presentation. There was a local board of elections. We had one of the BMDs come out, and so people can try them. And the judges that were there did let us know that every single vote in Maryland is counted. So that's good to know. So your vote does count. So it is important to vote. And you can, if you're not registered to vote, you can register online, or you can call me up, which Rachel will have my contact information, and I can support you in getting registered to vote. It's a little bit different than doing it in person, but I'm happy to do so. Some other things I wanted to share with you about voting is that if you choose, there's different ways you can get your ballot. If you're not voting in person, you could choose to get your ballot emailed to you, and you have to request that, but you can request that. And if you do, the only thing with that is, and for people that use different types of technologies to assist them to mark the ballot or read the ballot to them and have that on their own computer, that may be a good way to go. But the only thing with that is you do have to be able to print it out and be able to mail it in. You cannot email your ballot back in.
Tracy, we talked a little bit about the mechanics of voting. What types of documents, though, or do you need any identification to register? Because that does seem to be a barrier for some people that we support, is actually not having, for example, even a Maryland photo ID. So what documents do you need, if any, to register to vote?
Well, you would need to have, if you did not have a Maryland ID, if you had your social security number, which most people who receive services do have a social security number, and you would just need the last 4 numbers of that social security number. You should never put your full social security number on any document. But to be able to fill out the voter registration, you will either need your numbers off your Maryland state ID or the last 4 numbers of your social security number. And why I mentioned that also, it brings up another point that I thought of. If you do go to vote in person and you don't have ID, you still should be permitted to vote. And Maryland has a law that says we do not require an ID to vote. It's a good idea if you're a first-time voter, though, if you do not have an ID, because you may be asked for it for first-time voting in person. If you don't have that, though, it would be a good idea to bring something with your address on it, either maybe a benefits letter or a paycheck stub, something that would have your address and that's official on it. And if they can't find you on the list as you go to check in, then they'll give you what's called a provisional ballot, which just means until they get a chance to double check and make sure your information that you are a registered voter, they won't count that until they can go back and verify that you are a registered voter.
Excellent point. Thank you so much for that, Tracy. And we did, I did not mention in the beginning that today we might have people that live in Washington, D.C., but today we're just talking about Maryland specific. So just to clarify to our webinar participants. So we apologize for any residents of Washington, D.C. Because as you mentioned, right, this is correct, Tracy, a lot of these election laws are very local to the state or area that you live in.
That's correct. And I would just recommend, if there is anyone from Washington, D.C. and you have questions, to contact your local jurisdiction and find out what's specific in your area.
And Tracy, you've been an advocate for many years, and sometimes people have an expectation that someone with intellectual disabilities may not understand the process of elections or understand the candidates. What can you advise those people? That could be parents, that could be direct support professionals. They might question and say, but Tracy, they don't understand who these candidates are.
Well, one, I'm going to say to the whole audience out there is even people without disabilities sometimes don't understand every issue on the ballot, and that's okay. I would recommend that, of course, that people talk to people that they trust about choices for voting. I would recommend people listen to the news. I would recommend people, sometimes you could go online and listen to things. And often I say to people, what are some of the things that really matter to you? A lot of times housing may matter. A lot of times our Medicaid, because people a lot of times get services through a waiver, which that's Medicaid, so that's healthcare. So when people say, people don't understand, everything and it's hard, so maybe they shouldn't vote, or maybe I should just tell them who to vote for. I say that everybody deserves a chance to try to get the issues explained to them. And I would, like I said before, even people without disabilities don't know all the issues and don't vote for everything on a ballot sometimes. And that's okay too, as long as the ones you do know about and do want to vote for, you you make sure that that bubble is filled in completely, because that is important, and that you use pen instead of pencil, because if you use pencil, the ballot reader device that they actually put the ballots in to read our ballots after we mail them in or send them in, or to fill them out and put them in the ballot reading device. It will actually, if you use pencil, it will actually break the machine. So we don't want to use pencil. We want to make sure that we fill them in completely using pen. And but the ones you don't vote for, if you don't vote for certain things, like maybe there's a board of elections in your area, I mean, not board of elections, maybe there's educational things in your area and you don't know about them and they don't matter to you as much as the other things, and you can just skip those questions, and the ones that you do answer will be counted, but your ballot won't be discounted because you didn't fill everything in.
Yeah, excellent point, Tracy. That is something we heard directly from the Prince George's County Board of Elections, that even if you filled in one candidate, you only knew about one candidate, and that was your choice during election, your ballot will be counted. And you do not have to complete every question or every candidate, for that matter, in order for your vote to be counted.
That is correct. And also, the other thing that Disability Rights Maryland has done in the past is, we last presidential election and even 2 years ago, we sent out a survey to all the candidates, because we tried to do for the governor's race, we tried to do a actual forum where a representative, either the governor or representative from the governor's party and the other party, both Democratic and Republican, would come out and we'd have a live question and answer period. And that didn't work out because we couldn't get commitment from both of the candidates. And that was sad, because that was something that has gone on since the 90s. But for the first time last gubernatorial election, we couldn't do that because we couldn't get commitment from both of the parties to come out. So we did instead send a questionnaire that we got input from a lot of different advocacy organizations and providers in different places, and as many disability organizations as we could get input about the questions we should ask, because every candidate has what they call a disability platform, and that tells about what they will do if they were elected, what they would try to do to support people with disabilities. And so we had questions about housing, about transportation, about health care, about just a lot of different topics that matter and that people with disabilities rely on to be able to have inclusive lives and live in the community. So we sent that out to each one of the people that were running from office, and we did get that information back and we compiled it, and then we sent those things out to as many organizations as we could get. And that was written in very plain, easy to understand language, and we tried to hit on the very important topics.
Is there a plan as well for our national elections? As we know, this is a very big election year this year, to kind of get a similar information that's in plain language for voters?
Yes, there is. And we still try to work every year also with the League of Women Voters to also, because what has come up in the past is people say, you know, that plain language is really important to really being able to include as many people as possible and being able to make choices for, you know, who they think would best represent them. And as you said, like Rachel, at the very beginning, um, the elected officials love to hear directly from people with disabilities, and they only really care to talk to us if we can tell them that we're one of their constituents and we're a registered voter from their district. So that's so important because it really does mean that our voices count and however we can share that information with
Yeah,
them.
exactly. And I know, again, we spoke about one advocacy day that's for the state of Maryland, typically in February, the Developmental Disabilities Day. And that is what will get you an appointment with your elected official. If you first state, I am a registered voter in your district. I know you've also experienced that as well, Tracy.
Yes, yes. And with that day, with going down for Developmental Disabilities Day at the legislature, one is it's a very empowering time because uh, we go down as a large group of people. Last year, I think there was over 800 people at that day, and you feel very, very supportive, and it's very people care very much about that day, and the elected officials as well care about that day and take time to come and share things with us on that day before we go talk to our legislators about what's happening um, in the legislature, what's coming up for vote, and why they can support it or not, so that when we go talk to our individual elected officials, that we're able to put our story to it, because again, it does matter to them much more than you know, uh, someone from a provider agency going without the person that they support, um, coming directly from the people that get the services and supports and rely on those services. It means so much more coming from the persons themselves.
Yeah, excellent point, Tracy. And that kind of comes also to that question of if someone's living in with a provider agency, what role do you think that provider agency and direct support professionals play in helping someone to register to vote?
Well, again, I think it's a very important role in that because direct support professionals and even provider agencies play such a big role in making sure that people can live the lives that they want to live and be able to have the dreams that they want to have and accomplish the things they want to do in their life. I think they play a very big role because the more value that people that support people with disabilities put into helping people and get the information they need and be a part of that whole process, I think it speaks to how much a person is valued as a citizen. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, so much for that reminder. And also as family members, because we know many people also continue to live with their family as well, that we play an important role in supporting that person to get registered. And more than likely this year, it seems mail-in ballots will be probably the most used way to vote. Um, but in the event, which we hope that polling stations will be open, um, Tracy, I know you also are a person who uses a power chair to ambulate. What about physical access to a polling station? Because that can certainly be a barrier if someone uses a wheelchair or other similar way to move from place to place.
Yes, it can be a barrier. Last election for governor's election, I think we had determined that 98% of the polling places in Maryland were accessible, and that's very good. This year we were actually Disability Rights Maryland a lot of times will have interns that come to us, either they're getting ready to go into some field around disability, and a lot of times it's around the law, and we were going to have an intern work with us on voting this election to make sure all the polling places were in compliance and accessible. And unfortunately, because of the pandemic, we won't get to do that. But Maryland has done pretty well on making sure that most of our polling places are very accessible. We do at Disability Rights Maryland run a hotline, a voter hotline that is available during the day of election, where we take calls, and sometimes those calls have to do with accessibility. Maybe a curb cut was blocked or a door was locked that would give someone access to get into the most accessible route to get and to actually be able to vote. And we have been able to support people with getting those issues addressed on the very day of the election. So we do have that hotline, and it will be manned once again to address those issues. But and we also have that hotline just right now it's answered by voicemail, but if you do have any concerns around voting, you can always leave us a message there and someone will get back to you, hopefully within the next business day.
Thank you, Tracy, so much. And if people will note the handout section of our webinar on the Get the Vote Out resource page, we do have that hotline number so people can be prepared the day of voting, along with your contact information as well, Tracy, which is also here on this slide, your email and direct phone line. So people, I know you've said that, but please that they contact you regarding any questions regarding registration and how to get that done for someone that they support, or an individual themselves, of course, can contact you.
That's correct. Anyone, happy to answer any questions we can. And like I said, if I don't know the answer, because I am just an advocate, I don't know specific laws sometimes, but I can find that answer out or connect you with someone that can help you get that answer if I can't get it for you myself.
Thank you, Tracy, so much. And what we would like to do now is to go ahead and give people that opportunity to have their questions or comments as well. We welcome any comments, stories, and certainly questions. If you look to your control panel on the side of your screen for the question box, please feel free to submit your questions. And as we go forward, we will try to bring on Rob Malone, who is the Executive Director of the ARC Prince George's County, to share some information about us. Rob, are you there? All right, we will try to get back. I see we have some information here. Let's see if we can get Rob to come on. If not, Rob, just let us know here. We have some information here as well about the importance of making our voice heard here at the state level. And the ARC Prince George's County has been very instrumental, as well as other ARC chapters, on ensuring that we contact our elected officials regarding the funding that's going to be impacted in terms of the problems with COVID and impacting the state budget. So here we also have this handout noted here on the slide. This is from the ARC Maryland chapter, and it's actually a very excellent toolkit for us here in Maryland for ways to contact in all ways using social media, email, and even phone call scripts that you can contact your local officials about these cuts that are being proposed to funding for DDA services. So we will go ahead, and if we can get Rob on, we would love to hear from him, but we can go ahead forward and see if people have any questions as we share additional resources. And this page, again, you will see as a handout with this webinar, we have the link to the Maryland State Board of Elections, so you can find your local election board that's done by county. And also we included the District of Columbia Board of Elections, along with many national and local resources as well. So this is available. I'm sorry, go ahead, Tracy. I'm sorry.
Rachel, I was just going to say about the toolkit that's provided from the ARC Maryland. The reason I know Rob was going to talk to the group a little bit about this. The reason that it's so important right now for people to contact the Board of Public Works, and that would be the governor, the controller, and I forget who Nancy is, but the reason it's so important for people to contact them, particularly if you are a registered voter, and we can take care of that like today if you want to call and let me know that you need some support to do that, or you want to go online and fill it out. But it's so important because we've worked so hard at the legislature to get an increase of 4% that goes to direct support professionals. And because of the pandemic, there's been proposed cutting that out because of the fact that the state has gone through so much financial hardship. And we really need to tell, as many of you know, we wouldn't be able to make it without our direct support professionals. Here today at home, I wouldn't have been able to be on this webinar if my direct support professional didn't come out and support me to be able to get up and be able to do this work from home. So, and I know that many of you probably either have direct support professionals that support you at home, even if you're living at home with your family. Maybe you've had services that allow your family members to be able to still support you, but be able to work. And if you can have that support, maybe someone in your family will be affected. And the governor and our elected officials, again, need to know how important that 4% is, because as you've heard the term of first responders and the people that are essential, direct support professionals during this pandemic are absolutely essential workers. And so that's why we need to let them know that even a cut to the 4% is still a cut, and we can't have that because they were essential frontline workers during this pandemic.
Yeah, thank you, Tracy, so much. And I believe we have Rob on now. Rob, are you able to hear us?
I am here. Thank you. You can hear me
Excellent.
well?
Yes, we can hear you very
Good.
well.
I've
Yes.
been
So,
I've been hovering in the background. I want to thank Tracy for sharing and encouraging and giving instruction and hopefully lighting a little bit of fire under everyone. Part of being in the disability community is a constant need to advocate, a constant need to have your voice be heard, a constant need to vote. So I have put up on the screen the core people that she suggested we should be calling right now. What I did here is that next Wednesday, July 1st, whatever the governor is proposing to cut from the budget will be discussed, and this small group of three people will make those final decisions. And what I can tell you is that your phone calls make a difference. They may only last um, 10 seconds, they may last 2 minutes. But whatever that time frame is, whether it's a direct call with the individual you're trying to reach, their support staff, whether it's a voicemail, I'm telling you that it matters because I have spoke to, in particular, Nancy Kopp's staff who said they're getting calls. It's on our radar. So between today and tomorrow, however many folks are on the phone right now, you definitely want to make a call. So just jot those numbers down, take a picture of the screen, do whatever you need to do quickly, and just it will take you probably no more than 5 to 10 minutes to reach out to these folks today or tomorrow. You can also Google their email addresses or contacts, etc. But I do want to echo maybe two things. One is this is the time for the 2020 census. You know it. You know it represents dollars to the community, so certainly take advantage of that. There's only 5 or 6 questions, no social security number required. Just general information about you, I think your gender, your race, where you live. So work with folks that you need to make sure you get that done to be counted. And lastly, I would say absolutely, right? Voting makes a huge difference. This is a major election year, including a presidential election in the fall. You want to be registered to vote. You want your vote to count. And there are a lot of you turn on the news and you've got discussions every day about which direction to take, what kind of country we want to have, what sort of leadership we want to have, and we don't all have to agree. All of us will not vote for the same candidate, I am sure, or candidates, but it is important that you do cast your vote, and it's especially important once you get to local elections that you cast your vote. You find an opportunity to get to know the candidates, so you're not just looking at letters on the page and saying, "Oh, I'll go in alphabetical order." That is not the informed way. So we will try to do what we can to share information about candidate forums when those happen. Maybe in this season, there'll be a lot more that's virtual, so it'll be easy to just get online and listen to what people's priorities are, what their demeanor is, what their tone is, what vision they have. But you get to select these leaders, and they impact all of our lives. So I appreciate you all dialing in today. I love the fact that we're having this discussion now, and we're here to support you. So let us know what else you need. And thanks for tuning in.
yeah, thank you, Rob, for sharing that so much. And a handout is available with the webinar again, which has the email links to Governor Hogan, Comptroller Peter Franchot, and State Treasurer Nancy Kopp. And these are kind of those key leaders that you were speaking to, Rob, who really will impact these budget cuts. But
Absolutely.
if they don't hear from us, they don't hear from us. So
Right.
we definitely have to use our voice and
It's,
make sure we let people know we're registered voters, right, Rob?
right. So, and it's the squeaky wheel, right? Because what's happening is we will not be the only, well, we should not be the only folks calling to advocate for our particular cause, but the louder, the more volume they receive on a particular issue, it stands out. So we don't want other people's voices to drown us out. So put your voice on the scale and tilt it towards this community and what we need.
Okay, and thank you so much. And also the importance of the local election. Obviously, the national election is going to be big and is now, but those local officials really make those very impactful decisions on our lives, from roads to accessible housing to all types of services that we need and want for the people we support. So Rob, if you're able to stay with us, and I know Tracy will too, we're just going to share a few resources as people type in your questions. So please feel free to type in your question or raise your hand, and we can also unmute you if you prefer to do that way. Also a reminder as well about the Prince George's County Benefits Enrollment Center is staying active during this time of COVID, and there's a phone number there to please use during this particular time, and they will help you to access any benefits that you may be eligible for, including food stamps, able to get cell phones, helps with your utility bills. So please contact the Prince George's County Benefits Enrollment Center to get a free guide of all those benefits that you might need. Also, our other partner here with the Brunch Bunch, Prince George's Community Resources, is continuing to make things happen online. We have two particular events up here, which will be a 5-year anniversary celebration with a paint and sip party, which sounds like a lot of fun. I think we can use some fun right now. So please join Prince George's County Community Resources for that important celebration of 5 years. And also continuing with learning daily living skills, which will continue using Google Meets as the platform, along with other activities online, including online bingo. So please contact Pam Rosansky, and we'll have her information available if you'd like more information on those events. So we will check now. And Tracy, as I check the questions, do you have any final thoughts as well about registering to vote and that power, right? The power of that disability vote.
I can say I can remember the first time that I voted, and it was not too long after getting involved with the disability community. And I have to say I was scared. It's a little bit intimidating as far as, first time voting, but it's also very empowering to know that your voice really does count. And I used to, before I got involved, I used to think, well, I'm just one person. What can one person do? One person can do a lot. And I was reminded just this week that people with disabilities, their family members and friends, make up 26% of the vote. And we often think of a minority vote, which is a big percentage. And we often think of minority voting as a person's ethnicity, but the disability vote goes across all different minorities. And chances are, if you don't have a disability yourself, you know someone that's affected by a disability, either a friend or family member. And if all those people went out to vote in the last election, we would have made up 20% of the whole vote, which is a big percentage. So use that power.
Thank you, Tracy, so much. And we do have a question for you, and I believe we addressed it. Would requesting absentee ballots for our disabled family members be easier for those who have difficulty writing? Since those ballots are, I'm sorry, the ballots are computer-based.
Right. Well, again, requesting the ballot, you can support your loved one, your family member, your friend to request a ballot. there is a form that you would need to fill out if you were doing that. If they are not able to sign the form themselves, you have to fill out a form that says you did assist someone to vote and sign that and mail it in as well. But you can do that. If you're just physically helping the person fill out the information, but they are able to sign or put an X down on the bottom, and it's their information that they provided for you, you do not have to fill out that form. But if you do, if you are the one that's also going to be filling out, signing, then you have to fill out that form, and that is available on the website as well. And again, I can help you access any of those forms that you need us support doing if you need it, or any additional questions regarding filling out the form.
Okay, thank you, Tracy, so much. And we also have a question about a one-page information sheet that could be shared by advocates and provider agencies. And I do believe on our handout, Tracy, you may be familiar with this as well. There's a voter rights action plan from Disability Rights Maryland. I've included that as a handout on this webinar. But do you have any other areas you think might have additional information?
Well, that voter rights brochure handout there has the most up-to-date information there, and it tells you all about your rights, and again, it has our information to contact us if you have any additional questions, but it's a very useful tool.
Okay, thank you, Tracy, so much. And we have several comments about anyone on this call or beyond to please write a letter, call, or email the governor today, because we do not want to see those cuts to the DDA budget. So thank you so much. We also have a question about what is the best way to contact people, our elected officials. And I think we're kind of hearing phone calls seem to be the most direct way at this time, especially since it's getting very tight to the time frames. I don't know if Rob, you want to speak to that. What's the best way to contact people? What do you think?
I think they both work. Phone call or email works. I think for the most part, there may be a number of offices where people are not in the office, but if they're not, they are checking voicemail pretty regularly. So you can certainly leave a voice message. And then if you have an email address, you can drop that in as well.
Okay, thank you so
much.
Either
way works, I believe.
Okay, great. And I think kind of relating it back to the personal stories seems to be the most helpful. How does it impact me directly, as you said, Tracy, right? Or as direct support professionals?
Yes.
We also have a question here, and Tracy, I hope you don't mind. I'm going to offer you as one answer to this question. The attached PDFs are most helpful. What would you recommend is the best way to educate others about the importance of the disability vote? And I know you are very open to, just like today, meeting with groups of people is one way for yourself to be part of that education.
Right. And if you know any other groups that you are affiliated with that may find the information that we shared today useful, I am available to have telephone calls, one-on-one. I've done one-on-one telephone calls with people at their residence. I've done video webinars like this, whatever works, because I can't travel out to see people in person. I'm happy to call and talk, get online and chat, have a discussion. I know a lot of times it's difficult because people aren't doing what they would be doing traditionally in their daily lives, but we can still have conversations, and any way people can do that, I'm open to having those conversations and available. That's my job. So please
Great.
feel free to use that.
Thank you, Tracy. Yes, and I think it's, to me, that power of the disability vote is also hearing from you, Tracy, as a person who is a respected advocate in our community, speaking to people living with disabilities about the power that they can bring to our elected officials, because they do indeed work for us.
That is correct. And I just go back to also, I want to say, because a lot of times I hear from people, well, it's easy for you to understand, Tracy, because you seem to understand it, but the person that I love or the person I support wouldn't really understand all the issues. Again, it's bringing it back to what's important to that person and how the supports and services change people's lives for the better. And so any way they can share that, whether it would be pictures, whatever, with the support of someone, getting that message out there, because everybody has a story.
Well, I want to thank everyone today, Rob and Tracy, and thank you, Christina, as well, for making sure this voting rights presentation is accessible also to our deaf community. So thank you, Christina, and for Rob and Tracy. It's always a pleasure to present with both of you. So thank you again so much for your time. I know it's very valuable. So thank you so much. And we do want to remind people as we close that our next Brunch Bunch will actually be a meeting of our spiritual community collaboration on July 23rd. So please stay in contact with any member of the Brunch Bunch team for registration information, and we will be sharing resources on how houses of worship have stayed connected with their communities, and also how we can increase that connectivity with our faith community. So please join us on July 23rd. Registration information will be coming soon. And please, again, here's the contact information for our Brunch Bunch planning team. And we do thank you so much for joining us today. And please access our information as well for yourself or a family member or as direct support professionals to make sure the power of the disability vote is heard and heard loudly. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.